And as we come back, let us remind you that at the Post Live, Serling on Saratoga is coming to you live from the Parting Glass Pub in downtown Saratoga and is presented by Naira and partners, the Brave Will Foundation, giving families hope, www.bravewill.org, and the Saratoga Hospital Foundation. Together, we support community health. I want to thank everybody staying with us as we come back. My second guest, and I want to thank Dallas Stewart for being here, is a man who right now is the leading trainer in Saratoga. I don't even say his name, and they're cheering for Chad Brown. Chad, thanks a lot for taking time out of your schedule to join us.
Thanks for having me.
Let me ask you a question. How's everything going? You feeling good now? You got that one-win lead, or do you feel like you're at the 16th hole and you're like clinging to a lead and hoping to hold on?
Well, we're just taking it week to week, day by day, and right now we're still sitting okay, but there's a lot of racing left to go.
Yeah, it's obviously it's a hard, long year, and you fight for it all year. The trainer's title in Saratoga. I mean, I know it's not going to. I mean, your life is going to go on one way, but it is the one title, isn't it, all year that I think people point for?
It is, and particularly I'm from around here, so it would be good. And you know, we were close last year. I think we were a win off with a week to go, and it didn't happen. And you know, if it doesn't happen, we'll be back again next year. I'm not going anywhere.
Right. And your dad wants you to win it, right?
Yeah,
you got to win it for Dad.
My
right?
dad's still around. It'd be good while he's here.
Yeah, your dad's great. It's funny you talk about a local connection, and I'm local also. Do you sometimes feel a little more pressure because there's so many people, and they all mean so well, and they wish you luck. So sometimes I think you feel bad if you disappoint them if you don't win.
Yeah, particularly if you lose and you're walking out, and hey, buddy, you cost me the late double, or see someone down, you know, in the supermarket or whatever. But other than that, it's okay. You know.
Right. They tell you how to train. You ever get any training tips from people when you're around town?
We have some trainers in town. Yeah, when things don't go good.
I got a lot of handicappers.
I always listen though. You can learn from anybody.
Yeah. I'm sure you do. You ever bring them to the bar to give you some help?
Yeah.
Of course you.
Especially pre-race. Sometimes you run into someone downtown and they'll say, hey, this or that. And you know, I should re-handicap that race. They might have something there.
I wonder if you ever met anybody recently who told you to send a horse to lead that you were thinking of rating and it worked out. I'm sure that never happened. Let's talk about Lady Eli. For those of you, everybody's familiar with Lady Eli. How's she doing?
Yeah, she's doing real well, thankfully. She's come back well. Every week she's gotten better and better. She's walking quite a bit, sound, looks good. So quite a ways to go till she'll run again, but she will go back in training at some point.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's good news.
It's pretty exciting. A lot of people happy by that.
Thank you.
Compare her to to me, and I would guess, she's a very special horse. I mean, you've had some very good horses in your barn, and obviously working for Bobby Frankel. How does she compare to some of the great horses you've been around?
She's one of the greats, if not the greatest. And you know, when you look at her races, and now that she's not in training, when I look at my barn now, or look at races I'm participating in the same division, I say, wow. I mean, she's so much better than what was out there. And even the horses I worked with, I've never been around a horse that had that devastating a move on the turf, that quick a move. And, you know, very rare horse. Hopefully we get her back.
And she's not the nicest horse around the barn.
No, she's gotten better, but, you know, it's probably what makes her good. She was always very difficult. On the track, she was always good, but she really protects her space more than any horse I ever worked around. And we give her a space now.
As I recall, you told me she tried to kill the blacksmith the first time you shoot her.
We had to shoot her with Valium. Maybe the first 6 months we'd shoe her, and it took 2 days to put 4 shoes on her for the first 6 months we've had her. And then finally we got her to where, you know, we could shoe her in 1 day with a lot less medication. She just matured out of it, but, you know, she threw quite a few people around early on.
Yeah. Is that an indication to you that she might have been a little something special, just that she was so nasty?
At first, she was just special to my workman's comp policy, I thought. I wasn't thinking about her as a racehorse for the first couple of months, but then when we saw her, you know, I trained her, you know, these horses, we try to identify them if they're dirt or turf early, and for her, when we got out of the sales, I really thought she'd be a dirt horse, being by Divine Park. And we breezed her, and I got her all the way up to 5/8, and she sort of hit a wall on the dirt, and I said, she's just going to be okay. And we breezed her one day last summer here in early July in Saratoga on the turf. And we've had other juvenile turf horses that have got to the Breeders' Cup, have won, have finished second, really good handle on that division, on what it takes and how they breeze the first time we put them on there. And I had never seen anything like this when she breezed on the turf. It was unbelievable. And you're talking about a 2-year-old that breeds as well as Stay Salida or Zagora. I mean, older horses that were Breeders' Cup level. She probably worked better than they did as an unraced 2-year-old. So I just looked around if anyone saw it, and there was no one around. So I had to kind of hold it inside for a while.
I remember you and I were watching the Miss Griot together, and it was about a minute or so before the race, and you had 2 others in there, and she was the biggest price of all of them. And you said to me, and we weren't betting, we were just talking, and you said, well, we'll find out if I'm right. And I said, and you said, these horses can't beat Lady Eli. And she just went out and just buried them. Yeah, she was.
She breeds so well. True story is that these owners are new in the game that year. They only bought 3 or 4 horses. And the first one to run was Tammy the Torpedo last year here. It's the first out winner. And she just ran a week before Eli. And they came to town, and the managing partner was with me, and he didn't even run a horse at Saratoga in his life. And this horse circled the field and won for fun. And I remember him grabbing me, and he goes, that was terrific. I said, I have good news for you. We have one in the barn that's better. He goes, wow, so she's going to win? I said, she'll win the Breeders' Cup for sure, before she ever ran this horse.
She almost lost her first race. That's the only race in her entire career where she almost lost. Mm-hmm. I remember when Tammy Torpedo won, and I said, wow, and you said, I got one much better than her. and you were right, it was Lady Eli. She's been remarkable, and I think if she's able to come back, it'll be obviously very exciting, and I'm sure very emotional.
Yeah, it will be. So we'll just take it slow with her, but if any horse can do it, it's her.
So you have obviously a far-flung operation, and I know Cherie well because she's at Belmont. So talk about some of the people that work with you, besides Cherie DeVoe, obviously, who does a great job for you in New York.
We have 4 great assistants, and Cherie works at Belmont year-round, and George Abreu, his brother Ronaldo Abreu, and Jose Hernandez have 3 assistants up here right now. And these 4 assistants, it starts with them, and then they work on down from there. There's so many talented, dedicated people that work with me every day that that's the best thing about getting up going to the barn is the people I work with.
And they obviously do a sensational job. And I always joke with you about Cherie, and she gets mad. I always try to give her a lot of credit in the show, and she gets mad sometimes about that. Now, obviously, you're going for the training title, and that means a lot. But you've also got the first and second leading owners are Michael Dubb, who you train a number of horses for, and Claravis Stables, who you also train for. I have to imagine that you feel a great deal of pride in that, and regardless of what happens to the trainer's title, knowing that those 2 guys, one of them is likely to win, must be very satisfying.
It is, and you're sorry to have a loser when both stables put up so much money to participate, and they're very competitive. And you hate to see a loser, but it's nice that when you look up and you see that, and you train for the top 2 winning owners at the meet, you know that your business is going good.
Yeah, and obviously those are going well, and it's far from over. I think it's still 11-9 between the 2 of them, and had some tough beats. You're talking about looking at Lady Eli and trying to train her for turf and dirt. What are some of the things you look for when you're trying to train and you're trying to decide whether or not a horse is going to be a dirt horse or a turf horse?
Well, the biggest thing is if they have a turn of foot. I see a lot of people put slow horses on the turf because they don't get anything out of them, and those are really the worst turf horses, to be honest with you, because they're just one-paced. Right. So even horses that are training well on the dirt early, if they have a turn of foot, I'll normally explore it because it's such a weapon on the turf. If we can move them over to the turf and they excel on it, I'd rather find out sooner than later and not waste any dirt races.
And obviously there's so much of both in New York, which works well for your program. So I want to talk a little about Slumber. You bought Slumber for this Michael Dubb and the connections involved with Lady Eli at the November sale at Keeneland, and she was a Juddmonte horse. And obviously, Juddmonte and Bobby Frankel, when you work with Bobby, you were around a lot of Juddmonte horses, and it's gone pretty well with him this year.
It has. That horse came in. We bought him as a 6-year-old. We took a shot and hadn't run him until he turned 7. And he just blended in our program real well. And he's always been a nice horse. We always had our eye on him because I ran against him quite a bit with a bunch of turf horses, Big Blue Kitten, Real Solution, horses like that, Hyper. And that horse, when I handicapped, he was always the one to beat. And when the opportunity came up to buy him and move him in our barn, we jumped at it, and it has worked out. He's done real well. Really proud of the horse, and he's a real neat horse to work around.
And he had 2 Grade 1 placing, and he won the Grade 1 Manhattan. And I remember before the Manhattan, and you had, I think, 2 or 3 in there, and you and I kept talking about it, and we kept coming back to it together because you'd say to me, don't forget Slumber, and I'd say, yeah, he had a terrible trip last time, and it worked out. He got in serious trouble in the Arlington Million and lost all chance of backstretch. Is he doing okay since then?
He is. I'll tell you, he really got in a lot of trouble. He was cut up pretty good, and It's funny, Joe Bravo, who rode Big Blue Kitten, who finished second, I thought he got a really good trip and had dead aim in the stretch to win. And when Joe came back, he jumped off the horse and he started screaming at me about slumber. He says, I don't know how these two jockeys from Europe, they almost put this kid over the rail. I'm so upset. And you can't really see it at Arlington because the trees, when you're going by.
Yeah, well, right. Exactly.
I haven't really been able to see a good replay of it, but he said he didn't know how the horse went over the rail. So he had a rough trip. He got cut up a little bit, but he'll be okay.
Now, Arad was riding him, and he had been involved in the DQ and the Beverly D before that. What were the European rides? Because one of them, Jamie Spencer, had a lot of things to say about Irad after the race, which I thought was crazily unfair.
Yeah, maybe it spilled over and they figure they're going to put him
go
on
after
the rail
him right there. Yeah, I know. It was actually pretty bad with him. You have had some pretty good success there, Arlington. The stewards have been good to you over there.
Yeah, I can't complain about the stewards.
For once. Well, when you were put up, and fairly so, when Real Solution was put up a couple of years ago at Arlington, and I bet the Apache beat him, Real Solution would have won if he hadn't fouled him. I don't think you were lucky. I think it was a legitimate call.
I like to think that way. This time around, we got lucky.
So you've got a horse with Ken Ramsey that you train, and you named it after your daughter, Ava.
Yeah.
So she's lost now twice, 2 races.
Yeah.
Now we'll discuss the ride in a second. How's that going at home? She
not
talking
looking
to you?
good.
She wasn't talking to me today. She's not happy?
Yeah. She fired me and the jockey. So
I saw Javi. He wasn't speaking.
Want to train her or rider, you have to talk to her.
Really? So I think the lesson in there is don't name horses after your children.
I blamed it on the rainstorm, so seeing how that goes.
She might not have got the most clever ride. You're always thinking ahead in talking to you. Talk a little bit about how you think things are headed as we get back to Belmont and obviously heading to Breeders' Cup.
Well, headed back to Belmont first. I still have a lot of 2-year-olds that didn't get started yet, and we're late. So it's a real good group. So I'll just take my time with them like we normally do. And when they're ready, we'll run them. And this fall, I'm looking forward to several 2-year-olds to get started. And then on to the Breeders' Cup. You don't really know until it gets closer. So many things can happen in those last prep races. So I think we have a good handful of horses still. And hopefully they get through their preps okay and we're represented in some way there.
Talking about the difference between turf and dirt, obviously in American racing, and you have a lot of big owners, and I mean tremendous owners, are you getting pressure, do you feel, from the owners to get horses and prepare them for the Triple Crown, or do you feel your owners are happy with your program and whatever you choose to do?
A little of both. The success we've had, if it's been on the turf, we've done well, and there's a lot of happy owners because we're winning races, Breeders' Cup races on the turf, selling horses for a lot of money, just earning a lot of prize money in general, increasing the value of horses, selling fillies for millions of dollars that have won on the turf. So all that's good for business. When we start to recruit young horses that are bred and meant to run on the dirt, there is pressure to get them there if they're good enough. And I think this year we have a really good group of candidates to do that for us, but we're going to take our time and develop them through the fall. One thing I've seen is it's not really necessary for a Derby horse to run at Saratoga at 2. So if they're not ready, I'm just not going to run them.
I would say the argument is the other way. I would say the argument is that people have probably done to their detriment. They've run them in Saratoga and tried to hurry to win races up here.
It's the toughest racing, obviously, especially for 2-year-olds on the dirt. So, we have run a bunch and they're ready, but if they're not, we give them time. And I think we have a good group of horses in the barn, young horses that are bred to run longer. So I'm just going to take that approach and see where it takes us.
How much are you involved in buying the yearlings and 2-year-olds in training?
I'd say majority of my business is they're just sent to me now. We train for a lot of wonderful clients that have their own situations, bloodstock agents or racing managers or people that break their horses. They'll ask me to take them. Some of them are homebreds. They're not even bought at a sale. And I get a lot of good horses that way. There are a few clients that want my input at the sale, whether it's a yearling sale or a 2-year-old training sale, or if they're looking to buy a horse privately, they'll run the deal by me and see what I think about them. So it's a little of both.
So it's a little bit about handicapping your clients and finding out what they want.
It's what they want and where they're at that point in time in their business. And, some of them are doing very well, just hiring me just as a trainer. They have all the other infrastructure set up.
So when you got the Triple, it's funny, the one horse that you ran the Derby was Normie Invasion. And honestly, he should have won. When you went there, and he really ran the best race, and anybody that doesn't realize that has to look at who won the Preakness, Oxbow, who was part of the pace, and of course Palace Mouse, who was the pace and won the Belmont, and Normie Invasion was the one who blew open the pace by making a premature move there. Did you get a sense of the importance of the Derby when you were there and what it really might have meant to you?
I did, and I thought we had a really good chance going. I didn't expect her to get there that soon with a live horse. But I always said I only wanted to go if we had a real chance to win. And I felt like that horse did. I felt that he ran well. He didn't get the greatest trip. And leaving there, I feel even stronger about not really wanting to go unless you have a horse like him that can win. And I did get a good feel of what it takes. And that's what we're searching for when we go through these young horses now.
And in working with Bobby Frankel, obviously Bobby felt the same way. And Empire Maker is really in Peace Rules, obviously in the same year. But Bobby didn't train for that many owners. You have so many more owners. At a certain point, I think you have to be in a position to, unlike the one he was in, because you're going to have a lot of people pushing and pulling at the same time.
Yeah, it's a good situation when you have this many owners that. Not all of them, though, have Derby-type horses or dirt horses, but I do have several. And in the later years, that's when I worked for Bobby. He was starting to get those types of horses, and I went there 2 or 3 times with him to the Derby, and he was real close. And it's really the only race that eluded him. So someday if I'm ever lucky enough to win it, it'll be for him.
It showed how good, with Empire Maker and a horse who should have won the Derby. We talk about Frankel, and I know you love to talk about Bobby and all he meant to you. Ghost Zapper, was he the greatest horse you were ever around?
He was a really great horse, and if he was here right now, I know him. Bobby would say, yeah, it was for him. It's really close. I was a little partial to Medaglia d'Oro, just working around that horse. They were great horses, and I thought Medaglia was very unlucky. When you look back at the races, he could have won the Classic twice, really.
He should, absolutely. Should have won it when he lost to Pleasantly Perfect. He ran a tremendous
and then he caught a muddy track at Arlington, and Volpone beat him at a large odds. And he was I had a lot of respect for both horses, but Medaglia d'Oro was a horse that every day when he trained, he just dominated. Every morning, how many horses we have? We breezed that horse with so many horses that were...
But Empire Maker trained well with him, isn't that true?
He did, but, horses like Empire Maker and Ghost Zapper were great horses, but they had their soundness issues, and they had spotty, you couldn't run them that much, and Bobby did great. Those horses did as good as they could do because he was training them. I'm convinced of it. He knew when to back off horses and when to go on. Medaglia d'Oro raced all the time. He breezed all the time, and really from early in his 3-year-old year when he bought him till when he retired, that horse never missed a day of training. He never missed a workout. He never missed a race that he wanted to run him in.
He was truly an amazing horse. Yeah, he really was a good horse. He's standing at Darley now, right? And you ever go visit him when you're in Lexington?
I haven't seen him. I should go see him, but he's throwing what he was. He's just a solid horse.
And as was Ghost Zapper, obviously. He was a more flash. I mean, he was an amazing horse with his closing kick. And I remember we've talked about it. You were wondering whether or not he could stretch out, and Bobby sort of dismissed that notion, right?
Yeah. In the Island, he schooled me pretty good there. I thought the horse was to come from behind sprinter, so I questioned him. That was the wrong thing to do.
Well, he only got 130 by her, I think, when he won the Island.
I was just a little off.
Well, we're all off. It's horse racing. Chad, we can't thank you enough for coming and joining us here.
Thank you.
You got 4 days left. It's going to be between you and Todd, and I think everybody will agree. We wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
In the trainer's title. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.
Stay with us. We come right back. At the Post Live is brought to you by Naira. Wager on Naira.com, Naira's new state-of-the-art wagering interface.